All right, man, peace. So now Magic Johnson, the retired basketball legend, is going to speak his mind on who he believes is going to come out of the Eastern Conference this season in the NBA. Of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Let's keep it on the court. There's been lots of movement, familiar faces, and new places. Let's talk about some of them. Kemba to Boston, Kyrie to Brooklyn, Al Horford, Jimmy Butler, and a host of others switched teams. Stephen A. Smith.
Yes.
We talk a lot about the West, my friend. We're out here in the East, 76ers Fieldhouse. Okay. Y'all just woke up. Tell me this. Who's got the best team in the East?
The best team in the Eastern Conference, that's a very difficult question. If Kevin Durant comes back and he's even a modicum of what he was last season, it would not surprise me to see the Brooklyn Nets come out of the West. It really wouldn't, especially if he and Kyrie gel relatively quickly, which I don't foresee because of their style of play, how each one of them plays. I believe that they're both going to discover that they're too much alike. But they can shock the Eastern Conference because I don't think that there are any truly great teams out there right now. You also have to show respect to the Toronto Raptors, but that's going to mean that Pascal Siakam is going to have to take a quantum leap from what he was last season. To give him credit, he has taken huge leaps the previous 2 years. Can he ascend to the level of a top 10 player in the NBA for the next season? I just don't see it. And I don't trust Kyle Lowry without Kawhi Leonard. The Philadelphia 76ers don't have enough shooting. I believe that Joel Embiid is going to learn from last season's trials and travails, especially in the playoffs, but he's not going to be enough to lead them to a championship, especially with Ben Simmons not being able to shoot. And I don't foresee him improving on his jump shot in one off season, especially since supposedly he was working on his jump shot before last season and he was still pretty much the same guy. The Milwaukee Bucks, I believe, are going to be a lesser version of themselves, especially with the loss of Malcolm Brogdon. The Indiana Pacers are my dark horse, but I don't think they're going to have enough, especially with Victor Oladipo coming back from, I believe he had the torn quad, whatever that injury was that he had, or dislocated kneecap, whatever it was. That was a very serious injury that he had last season, and I'm not quite sure if he's going to be all the way back enough to help Malcolm Brogdon and some of the other very good young players that they have be a true potential dark horse or upset in the Eastern Conference.
Magic Johnson. The Philadelphia 76ers are going to the NBA Finals. Boston. I'm going to defer to my man Jalen Rose when he points out that Boston arguably has the best perimeter shooting team. We can't ignore that. Right. So
they're another dark horse team. They could surprise some people next season, especially if Kemba is able to gel with those two young wing players that they have, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum.
So lost Kawhi, ain't nothing to discuss. Right. The Greek Freak, is phenomenal as he is, and you don't have to worry about getting fined for talking about him now. The Greek Freak is elite as he is. The combination of not having a reliable perimeter shot, combined with Malcolm Brogdon now being in Indiana. Yep. My attitude is, I don't like the fact that Philadelphia lost J.J. Redick. That's a big loss to me. But
that is a relatively big loss, but J.J. Redick reminds me of a modern-day John Paxson. For you brothers who grew up in the early 90s and remember John Paxson, he was a dead-eye mid-range jump shooter with a lot of grit. He was able to hold his own on defense, but what he was known for was being an unbelievably accurate and proficient mid-range jump shooter. But he needed to have Jordan and Pippen there to kick the basketball out to him. I'm not quite sure how effective or how necessary a J.J. Redick is unless you have a Jordan-esque player like a Kawhi Leonard playing alongside of him.
The fact that Boston no longer has Al Horford and the Sixers do, not only somebody to pair with Embiid, but to spell for him whenever he's out. I'm going to believe that Ben Simmons been working on his shot. I'm going to believe that Tobias Harris doesn't have to worry about coexisting with Jimmy Butler, and that's a plus.
The Sixers definitely have the best team on paper in the East as of right now with no KD in Brooklyn. But I would be concerned about them if KD were to come back and look like anywhere near what he was before he tore or ruptured his Achilles.
I'm going to believe that Josh Richardson is a young line who plays on both ends of the floor and really goes after it defensively. And the combination of Horford and Richardson defensively with the Sixers, combined with what Horford gives you offensively, defensively because he's a nice set shooter. I'm still a little suspect on their bench. I don't like that Redick is gone, but I don't think the other teams in the East are strong enough. I think the Sixers are going to be playing in June.
By the way, okay. This is a debate show, but there's no debate about that. You will not score on the Sixers starting five. Like you said, they can't play, Pat Riley Knicks ball anymore, Bad Boys Piston ball anymore, and that's true. But modern defense, you can't score on this team. First of all, Jimmy Butler showed you what he's made of in the playoffs last year.
Right.
Now, and Embiid, when healthy, is an MVP caliber player. He's getting guys one-on-one. He's performing right there with the Greek Freak and everyone else when he's healthy. Simmons, I agree with you. If Simmons gets a jump shot, it's over.
Right, but people keep saying that. Like, if Simmons gets a jump shot, that's like saying if Emmanuel Lewis ever gets to be 6'5", I mean, is it really ever going to happen?
Even without that, Richardson's a huge defensive improvement over J.J. Redick, and he can shoot the ball. He can hold it down shooting the ball. When you look at, you add Al Horford to that team, so the Sixers are weakened. Obviously, the Bucks are weakened. Also, Mirotic gone.
That's a great point as well. He was a great stretch four for them.
The Celtics are weakened.
The Celtics are weakened. What I say? I meant Celtics are weakened. Bucks are weakened because Mirotic was a guy where I thought he never really got healthy in a way where he could be integrated into that team. He's a bad dude. He's gone. He's in Europe. So the Bucks are weakened. The Sixers are weakened. I'm sorry. The Celtics are weakened. The Sixers' defense is going to be impossible.
Imagine. I believe that both of you are right. My only question is two things with the Sixers.
Their jump shooter.
Who's going to take over in the fourth quarter? Because Jimmy Butler had that role last season. Right. And then will Coach Brown improve? Because I don't want to hear about no process no more. There's expectations now.
Agreed.
So, Joel Embiid, no more playing around. I don't care about funny videos and all that type of stuff. You got to get serious about winning the championship. Ben Simmons, you got to improve. You got to take your game to another level if you're going to win the championship. I do like Al Horford. You were right.
Who? Al Horford? Who the hell is that? Al Horford. Is he selling ass in Philly?
Because Embiid can get some rest now, and Embiid can miss some games now because of Al Horford. Right. I love Josh Richardson, a perimeter defender and a guy who can hit the three-point shot. Now, Milwaukee, I think it's going to...
Right, but they had that already. Philly had that already with the kid that they traded out there to Minnesota. So is he really going to be the person that puts them over the hump, Josh Richardson?
Down to those two teams, Philly and Milwaukee. The Sixers should go to the championship.
Question about the Sixers, because I love the point about who's going to take over, because that was Jimmy Butler.
That's right.
It's not really Josh Richardson, although he's the exchange.
No, it's not that it's not really Josh Richardson. It's not Josh Richardson. He's not going to take over shit.
Works for them because he can hold it down defensively shoot.
That's not his
But
role.
it's not him. Can a big do that? Because if Simmons can't shoot, and it's not going to be Richardson, and Tobias Harris also is, he can shoot the ball, but it's not like Tobias Harris you think of take you off the dribble, kill you in crunch time. Who's that going to be? Can that be a big in the modern game? You can see.
It could be Joel Embiid in the Eastern Conference as long as they're not going up against a sharpshooting team in the East. That's why I state Boston could be a problem for a lot of these teams, because if Kemba and those two wings get hot from the outside, especially from three, that might be able to nullify any deficiencies that they have in being able to defend Joel Embiid. Philly will not beat the best team coming out of the West, in my view, unless there's some type of upset or major injury on one of the teams out West, because most of those squads could pull up from three off the dribble or off the catch, and there are very few Eastern Conference teams that can do that right now.
Wouldn't be Antetokounmpo last year.
No, it can't be a big in a modern game. But Joel Embiid plays like a power forward more than a center. I love his game because he can hit the three-point shot, but also he can take you off the dribble. But they're going to have to decide in the fourth quarter who's going to be that guy who can take over. Now, I'm hoping.
Well, you know what, Magic, if they still have to decide that, that means that they're not going to have that factor this year. They're going to win a good 55 regular season games just based on talent, and they might have a deep playoff run for the simple fact that they're not going to be any truly transcendent players in the Eastern Conference, and the two that are, one of them plays for the Philadelphia 76ers. The other one is Giannis, who we know is most likely still going to be limited coming into this season. And the third one, Kevin Durant, he might not be back to where he was by the time the playoffs come. So they might actually be able to make a finals run just because everything is going to fall into place for them this year. But I don't see them beating whoever comes out of the West. But we'll see.
Simmons emerges as that guy.
I will say this: Tobias Harris has to step up.
It's not going to be him.
I know that, but
it's not going to be him.
But they did listen. I agree with you, but he's capable of hitting threes. He's going to have to show up. Here's what I love, and I brought this up a few months ago. Actually, it was immediately after the Sixers had lost to Toronto when Kawhi Leonard had hit the triple bounce and it fell in and all that stuff. Embiid went back in the hallway with crying in front of everybody. You know what I loved about it? It ain't funny no more, is it?
That's
You're
what
playing
I'm talking
around.
about.
You're playing around. You're joking around. You are a monster. You are an elite talent as a
He wasn't just crying. He was crying like a biatch.
man in basketball. Even though you have the numbers, there's still an absence of dominance. And I think the fact that he was so hurt and so miserable by the fashion in which he lost, I think not wanting that misery again is going to elevate his level of focus, and I think Embiid's going to come back this year and be a monster. I love that point. Magic, I love that point, but I want to ask you something about Ben.
Shit, you love all of Magic's points. When are you going to make some good points?
Because to me, that's where you have, 6'9" point guard who can't shoot. Sounds like, not that you couldn't shoot like Simmons. You shot better than Simmons, but you were known as a guy who couldn't really shoot it, but could do everything else. And from a rookie, you're 20 years old. You started the season 19. Your center goes down. You jump at center against Darryl Dawkins and give him 42 and 15 in a game 6 in the finals that you win. What does Ben Simmons need to do to become Magic Johnson in that situation?
It's not really working on your game. For him, it's attitude. When you 6'9", you got to say nobody can stop me, right? And yes, he's got to get a jump shot, and he will. And I think he worked hard this summer already. I think he's going to come back and shock everybody. Also, too, it's the confidence. You got to play with that swagger and that confidence.
That's difficult for him to do playing alongside Joel Embiid. And I think that that's going to harm their relationship eventually because they're both pretty much in the same age range. Had it been a similar situation that Magic Johnson was able to encounter with Kareem, where Kareem came into the league 10 years before Magic, and Kareem was actually ready to divest some power over to someone who could help him win. Remember, by the time Magic got there, Kareem was already like a 5-time MVP. He'd won a championship, made a couple of finals appearances on the Lakers. They were able to make a couple of playoff runs into the second round, maybe even the third round, but they were never able to get to the finals until Magic got there. Kareem, being 30 years old, 31, 32 years old, however old he was when Magic finally did get there, was ready to divest a certain amount of authority over to Magic and say, here, you take it. Right now, Joel Embiid is still trying to find his superstardom, and he's going to take a lot of the quote-unquote clout that probably should be Ben Simmons's away from him, and it's going to hurt the team in the long run. We saw how Ben Simmons played in that one game against the Brooklyn Nets when Joel Embiid was out. He was dominant.
And I want Joel Embiid to give him that.
Thank you, sir.
So what has to happen? Kareem used to say, Irvin, take over the game. So Embiid has to go and say to Ben, go take over the game, young.
That's the problem. It's not going to happen because Joel Embiid believes that he can take over the game. He believes that he's the alpha. Kareem, by the time he got you, already knew that it was time to divest a certain amount of power over to you.
We're going to get on your back.
My only concern with what you're saying is you gave me two guys on the same squad in the same starting lineup who are the cornerstones of your franchise, and we said both of them got attitude issues.
Well,
that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Coach Brown got to step in now. See, you got to have a championship coach who understands that. Now, I do want to give some love to Indiana, because watch out for Indiana.
They're a potential dark horse, but I'm not quite sure how good Oladipo's going to be when he gets back.
Watch out for Indiana. Indiana and Nate McMillan can coach. He can coach. Watch out for Miami, because one thing good, they're...
Oh, boy, Stephen A is so funny.
Jimmy Butler, and they got a good coach, and they play hard. Okay. And so I'm just saying some other teams who...
Imagine just saying watch out for Miami because of Coach Riley. Pat Riley in the front office.
Some other teams, those two teams are the top teams, but there's some other teams who are going to play some good basketball this season in the East.
I like what you said, and it's good for the students to hear this too. For Ben Simmons, it's not working on his game, it's working on his mindset, and attitude is something that we can all control.
That's right.
Right?
That's
Correct.
right. Ball. He's a superstar in the league.
42,
No
15, and 7, jumping in center as a
Resourceful.
rookie. Final game of the
Utility.
finals.
All right. Still much more to come here.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. For the most part, I agree with Magic and Stephen A. Smith have stated. As of right now, I would probably pick the Philadelphia 76ers because they have the most talent on paper. But if KD were to come back and look anywhere near like how he looked prior to the injury last year, especially in the playoffs, all bets are off. Because if he and Kyrie are able to develop any type of synergy heading into the playoffs, especially if they both embrace the culture of the Brooklyn Nets that was exhibited last season, they could be a major force. So peace.